To answer your first question, yes, Naval Mine Deathrattle Rogue is a real deck. I know you're probably not going to believe that without actually seeing the deck being played, so I'm going to have a couple of games that I'm playing a little bit later on in the video. You can look forward to that. Before we come to that point, though, I want to take a look at the cards, talk about the deck a little bit, and share some of the things that I've learned from playing the deck itself. So, full disclosure, I ripped this list off of Twitter from Dr. Boom Hearthstone. Apparently, this man is actually a mad genius. This deck is fun. And it's very, very strong. So, the deck itself is really built around Naval Mine, Deathrattle, deal 4 damage to the enemy hero. When you can get this Deathrattle multiple times, it becomes very, very strong, and you're just doing a lot of damage to the enemy hero. So, some of the cards in the deck that are supporting the Naval Mine, of course, we've got Snowfall Graveyard. Your Deathrattles trigger twice, and this actually lasts 3 turns. So instead of doing 4 damage, it's going to do 4 damage twice. 2 times 4 is 8. So you can imagine how that can really add up. If you have multiple bombs going off, you're really doing a lot of damage to your opponent's face. Also, Counterfeit Blade, gain a random friendly Deathrattle that's triggered this game. So after a bomb Deathrattle has gone off, then this weapon will also get that Deathrattle. Of course, a 4 damage weapon is nothing to sneeze at, and then it's going to have a Deathrattle after the second charge that's going to deal 4 damage or possibly 8 damage if that Snowfall Graveyard is in play. Very, very powerful there. A lot of the rest of the deck is really just about staying safe while we get to our win condition of multiple Naval Mines, and then just being able to draw cards. So you can see Backstab's included here. In aggro matchups, this is kind of like an anti-aggro tool to be able to remove especially dangerous minions. And then we can also use it to kill off the Naval Mines. They, of course, have no attack, so sometimes we actually have to kill these ourselves because our opponent can just ignore them in order to not take that damage. Blackwater Cutlass, of course, tradable, can discount a spell. It's very, very strong. And then this is just another anti-aggro tool that's good at killing, say, like Iron Deep Trog, things of that nature. Gone Fishing, Dredge, very powerful new keyword. I love it. And, you know, a good draw card for only 1 mana with the combo. Extortion here, again, we can use this to kill off our own Naval Mines. Then also a bit of an anti-aggro tool, also tradable. Tradable, another keyword, very, very strong. Last couple of expansions, the keywords have been very good, by the way, very, very interesting, and I feel like they've potentially raised the skill ceiling in Hearthstone. Having a lot of fun with those. Sir Finley, swap your hand with the bottom of your deck. If I have a really bad hand in the opening hand and I have Sir Finley, I'll actually play this on turn 1. If I had, say, Finley, you know, Backstab against a control deck, Preparation, and say, like, maybe Extortion, maybe I'll Finley on turn 1 just to get different cards in my hand and hopefully be able to find something to be able to do. Outside of that, I tend to save Finley for later in the game, you know, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, just to be able to get different cards in my hand and hopefully be able to find lethal. But an interesting card there, almost kind of works as like card draw, or it actually is card draw, I guess, being able to trade out your hand with the bottom of your deck. Yoink, basically just a deck filler. Nothing great, nothing terrible, but sometimes you can find a hero power. Against aggro, you might need some healing. Hunter hero power can be good if you're just looking for that couple of damage, and mage hero power, you know, again, damage, but also potential to be able to remove dangerous minions on the board with that 1 damage. Doomsayer's really just there to try to buy us some time. Nothing really else to say about that. Your opponent can't kill it, they send all their minions face, and then they don't have their minions anymore, so it could potentially be a lifesaver here. Forsaken Lieutenant, we actually use these to copy the Naval Mine. The only Deathrattle in the deck is Naval Mine. Forsaken Lieutenant, after you play a Deathrattle minion, become a 2/2 copy with Rush. So we would play Lieutenant first, and then play Mine so that it copies the Deathrattle. You can tempo this card out on turn 2 if you're really confident that your opponent can't remove it and they can't silence it, say against like a Silence Priest. You can tempo this out on turn 2. If on a turn after that you're going to copy the Naval Mine, don't forget to attack face first and then play the Naval Mine. It'll then transform and it'll be a 2/2 with the Deathrattle, and it'll have Rush. But you want to make sure that you don't miss that 2 face damage if it's already in play and can go face. Wicked Stab's just in here for a little bit of extra reach. Shroud of Concealment. This is really just for card draw. Allows us to draw minions in the deck. Of course, Forsaken Lieutenant, Naval Mine, very, very important. We're not going to win games if we don't draw those cards. We don't necessarily care if they have stealth or not. If those minions do have stealth and we have the mana to be able to play them in stealth, it's just something to keep in mind, gives us an extra option. If we can actually hit a Doomsayer with Shroud of Concealment, a stealth Doomsayer, it's going to be really hard, I think, for most decks that are in the meta to be able to remove, and maybe even impossible. So it can just give us a good board clear. But again, we're not really worried about stealth. You know, playing Shroud of Concealment on turn 3 is really, really fine. Sometimes you can even prep it out on turn 1. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's really just card draw. Sketchy information. Draw a Deathrattle card that costs 4 or less. Trigger its Deathrattle. Only card in the deck this is going to hit is the only Deathrattle, which again is Naval Mine. So we'll deal 4 damage to our opponent, or 8 with Snowfall Graveyard. And then it's going to put the Naval Mine in hand. So again, just card draw. But we actually are able to tutor exactly the card that we need because this is our win condition. And of course, Snowfall Graveyard, Deathrattle's triggered twice last 3 turns. I think we already went over that. Very, very important. Shadowcrafter Scabs, if you don't actually have this card, it's not a big deal. I've actually never been able to play Scabs in the games that I've played with this deck just because he's so slow at 8 mana. I've either won the game, typically we're looking to win the game, you know, around turn 6 or turn 7. If it goes beyond that, we're probably in a position where we're not going to be able to win. Thinking against like Ramp Druid, they probably started to heal with Earthen Scales, and they have, you know, threats on the board, so we're probably actually dead before we get to turn 8 in situations like that. Otherwise, you know, it could be good, but if you don't have this card, I wouldn't worry about it. I haven't actually looked at what replacements might be just because the deck has been working really well for me with exactly what's going on here. So as far as the Mulligan, if you think you're facing aggro, you're going to want to keep anti-aggro stuff. You know, you might keep a backstab, you might keep Cutlass, extortion. You don't want to overkeep on the removal because when you're against an aggro deck, we also need to be taking proactive steps to be able to get to our win condition. If our entire game is just defensively, oh, I can't take damage, then we're not going to be able to win. We have to be able to piece the damage together to be able to kill our opponent as well. So it's really a fine line that you have to walk in those matchups. You have to use your health as a resource. So as long as our opponent doesn't set us to 0 or below, then that's fine. So we're going to be removing, you know, high priority minions, say like a Mecha Shark, because Mage can put out so much damage with a Mecha Shark, or Automaton as examples. You know, 4 damage minions, you might have to remove those maybe through a combination. You might have to actually swing into them with your hero power. And, you know, of course, extortion first, swing into them, or backstab, you know, some combination of things. But you can't just take that repeated damage over and over and over again in these aggro matchups. Otherwise, you're just not going to have enough time to be able to kill your opponent. Against Silence Priest, sometimes those big 7/7 shellfish can be especially dangerous. When that card comes down on turn 4, if you have a way to be able to kill it, it's best to just go ahead and do so. If it hasn't been silenced, it's going to draw us 2 cards. But if they play the Asharan Ritual, silence it, and copy it, 2 7/7s really, really puts us on a clock and limits the amount of time that we're going to have to be able to win in that matchup. And along those lines with Counterfeit Blade, you know, this damage isn't always going face. You can actually use this to trade for high priority minions on the board. You know, if your opponent has a Bolner on the board, you know, you're playing against Shaman, you're probably going to remove the Bolner because you don't want them getting repeated battle cries over and over again. So damage doesn't have to go face, but if it does go face, you know, of course, it's going to add up really, really quickly to be able to get there. Against control style matchups, we're free to just kind of keep our card draw. So, you know, I would keep Sketchy Information. I would keep Shroud of Concealment. If I do have some card draw already in hand, I might even consider keeping Snowfall Graveyard, but only if I already had other card draw in hand. You can win games without Graveyard, but again, it's just going to make it a little bit easier copying those Deathrattles, or rather, Deathrattles triggering twice. So that's kind of the Mulligan. That's the matchups of how we're going to play. And now I'm going to jump into a few games. We're going to take a look at how this deck actually functions. So right off the bat here, it looks like we've got a Warlock. Could be Murloc Warlock, could be Curse Warlock. I think I mostly see Curses here, so that's Sketchy Information in hand. Also have second Sketchy Information. And I have absolutely no idea what we're playing against here, so we're just going to proceed as normal. Get the Sketchy Information, deal 4 face, and Naval Mine. The good thing about the Warlock matchup, of course, is they're going to be damaging themselves by tapping. They do have access to healing, but should be a pretty good matchup for us because looks like we're not playing Murlocs, so I would think that that means that we're likely hopefully against something a little bit slower. Murloc could actually be a scary matchup. I haven't faced a Murloc Warlock with this deck yet, so we'll have to see what our opponent is up to here. But as far as our hand goes, things looking really, really good. One Naval Mine in hand, second sketchy information, and then we also have the weapon. So this is great. We can play the weapon on turn 4, and it's going to be able to get the Deathrattle since we've already had a Deathrattle go off. And yep, we're just going to sketchy information here. 2 mines in hand and a Forsaken Lieutenant, so draw is looking really, really good here. Game should be looking very good. Our opponent's already down to 20 and it's only turn 3. Okay, so we see here that it actually is Curse Warlock, so we don't really care about taking an additional damage, so we're just going to weapon up and swing face. None of these minions are really valuable enough for us to kill. Just going to go ahead and get the damage in face. I don't mind taking, 3 damage from minions on board. I don't mind taking 1 damage from the curse. Again, just going to use my health as a resource here and keep doing damage face. So this game is just looking so good. Opponent's at 16. Got the coin damage. Okay, so there is Zakul. I really like this Curse Warlock deck, by the way. Got a nice little video on it on my channel. If you're interested in that, after you watch this video, you might want to check it out. So I want to get rid of the curse, I think, just because I don't want him to continue to heal with the curse, because Zakul is staying on the board, and I really don't think I want to kill the Zakul. I just want to try to set up lethal for next turn. Again, turn 6, turn 7 is what we're looking for here, so I can swing face, Snowfall Graveyard, yeah, then swing face. This is going to be 12 damage to the face right here, and then we'll just play the curse. I'm going to get that curse out of my hand, make sure that my opponent is not healing, and we're going to pass it back to him. So we're going to eat some damage here. They're going to have 9 damage coming just from the board, and then if they can get another curse in our hand, that's going to be damage and healing. But with only 5 mana, and they've already used the coin, I think the most that they're going to be able to do is put 1 curse in our hand, and it's going to hit for 3. That'll heal our opponent to 10, and then we just have lethal. We've got Wicked Stab, we've got a Lieutenant, we've got Naval Mine, and, absolute worst case scenario, we could try to yoink and hit maybe the Hunter Hero power, but I really don't think we're going to need it here. Oh, he plays Sir Finley in his deck. That's really interesting for Curse Warlock. I think Finley could be very good in Warlock decks in general, just because with a large hand size, you get to look at so many cards at the bottom of your deck. Or rather, pull those cards out of your deck and put them in your hand. So yeah, he heals to 10. We just have lethal here, so it's going to be Lieutenant, play the Mine, trade off the Lieutenant. That's going to be 8 damage face, and then of course the Wicked Stab here. And there you go, turn 6 kill. Next game looks like we've hit a Priest here, so I'm thinking that this is probably going to be Silence Priest. Silence Priest is really the only kind of Priest that I think I've been seeing. Silence Priest, it's in my experience, it's been a little bit of a harder matchup, but I think I've gotten better at playing it. This isn't bad. Shroud's a good card to have in hand. We have a Mine in hand. But we got to be careful about playing like Mine and Forsaken Lieutenant. Sometimes you can actually like tempo out a Mine or a Lieutenant. You don't always have to have Snowfall Graveyard in play. 4 damage is still a lot. But yeah, that looks like Silent Priest. It's definitely a card that they run. So we have to be careful about just sticking minions on the board because Chart of the Nauru, they can just silence our side of the board. So anytime a Mine or a Forsaken Lieutenant is coming down, we're going to have to make sure that we kill it. Just going to prep out the Shroud here. Drawing cards is good. We don't necessarily need the stealth effect. There's a Forsaken Lieutenant, so we've got a Lieutenant and a Naval Mine in hand, but again, we're going to want to make sure that we're in a position to be able to kill those on our turn to make sure that that damage actually goes off. Sketchy information, that's a really good pickup. We want to trade here. Yeah, I think so. Just going to make the trade. Backstab in hand now, so that's good for us. So once the Shellfish hits the board, we'll be able to play Forsaken Lieutenant. We'll play Naval Mine to copy the Deathrattle, and then we can trade the Lieutenant, and then of course we'll be able to backstab our own Mine. So sketchy information. Also picked up the weapon here. That's going to be really good for us. So turn 4 is likely just equip the weapon, no matter what they do. There's the Shellfish on curve. So if they can play that, I think it's a Sharan Ritual, we could be in a little bit of trouble. 2 7/7s on the board. And unfortunately just traded away the Extortion. If I had the Extortion in hand, I would probably swing into the 7/7 and just kill it, which would also draw us 2 cards. But this is fine. Okay, and that's not a Sharan Ritual, so I'm liking what's going on here. Definitely on a clock, though. We've only got a couple of turns to be able to kill our opponent. And no Snowfall Graveyard yet. So we'll just yoink. Hunter Hero Power looks good. And then swing face and just equip the second weapon. Fast turn. Opponent's at 14. We've got Lieutenant. And 1 mine that we can kill off. So we've got potentially Lieutenant Mine, trade the Lieutenant, backstab the Mine, and then we can just equip our Hero Power weapon to break our own weapon. He heals to 16. Yep, this is lining up perfectly. So again, this is going to be a turn 6 kill here. Actually pick up a second backstab, so we would be able to kill off 2 mines here. So no matter how you look at it, we've got 16 damage going face, and actually a little bit extra with this Hunter Hero Power. So, yep, play the Lieutenant, play a mine. Yep, swing face, the trade here, and then we've got the 2 backstabs to be able to finish off our opponent. So another really solid game here. As you can see, the deck is just so powerful. The mine's doing 4 damage. It's a lot of damage. The weapon, 4 damage weapon with the 4 damage Deathrattle. You don't always have to have the Snowfall Graveyard. It's just a really, really solid deck. So very, very happy with this deck.